Alright everyone, welcome back to another Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes video with Fat Phil, and of course, I was in the office yesterday. We had a big meeting with our external auditors, and unfortunately I had to be there for that, and I missed all of the wonderful news that we got related to Galactic Legend Hondo and his kit reveal, the designer Q&A, a lifter unit for Profundity, Leviathan changes, the next era is dropping. There's a lot of stuff that I missed yesterday, so we're going to be kind of catching up on that in pieces, right? I've got to make sure that I kind of am, working through that at my own pace. So with that, we're going to start today just looking at the kit reveal for the Rogue One, the Profundity Lifter, the upcoming Leviathan change. I actually think this is the most important information that they dropped yesterday. Because with Hondo, we don't know when he's coming. We still don't know what Smuggler's Run 3 is. So I'm not as important as that can be. I think this change to the, Profundity Lifter and the Leviathan change, far more important, far more drastic, and I think will impact more players than Hondo will immediately. So with that said, like, subscribe, comment down below. Let's give our shout to the channel members, as always, for their continued support. Of course, my pictures don't want to pull up, because why should they? Thank you guys again for keeping the faith, believing me through good, bad, thick, thin. Again, with all the recent news going on and stuff, you guys have been nothing but supportive and understanding, and I really appreciate it. One of my favorite comments I saw on my video talking about, everything was, they said family comes before family, except the first family had the letter F, and the second family was PH, and I loved that it was this recognition that, my family has to come before the Fat family. So I really appreciate it. That made me, you have no idea how good that made me feel. I really appreciate it, guys. So let's get in here. Let's talk the Rogue One and Profundity Lifter and then Leviathan change. All right, so we're going to flip over to the screen capture here. And the fat face is kind of fine where it is. So I want to talk about the Leviathan change first. I think this is, before you get into the Rogue One change, I want to talk through this Leviathan one, because it's just crazy. With the upcoming release, we have made an adjustment to the Leviathan kit. The unique will now have this added. Galactic Republic, Jedi, and Rebel enemies can't assist or attack again if their attack is targeting a Sith. That is huge. So with this new ship coming, you can no longer assist against the Leviathan if you are Galactic Republic, Jedi, or Rebel. It's not all inclusive to light side, it's particularly looking at the Galactic Republic fleet and the Rebel fleets. That's a huge change. That is a big deal. So even with this new lifter unit coming to the Profundity, the Rogue One, it still does not look like it is going to be able to contend with the Leviathan. And they have the changelog here from CG Mouse where it says, "We've been keeping a close eye on Leviathan for some time, monitoring its performance and the overall health of the fleet meta. During development of Rogue One, we had a clear vision for how the updated Profundity fleet should function. However, once Rogue One was implemented, it began performing in the Leviathan matchup beyond what we intended. Since this was an area of focus, we saw this as the right opportunity to adjust Leviathan, reinforcing its position in the meta without diminishing the strength and identity of the updated Profundity fleet. This approach allows us to keep both fleets powerful and relevant while ensuring Leviathan remains top of the fleet ecosystem where we currently believe it belongs." That is a very important sentence at the end there, where we currently believe it belongs. In my opinion, this right here, this little bit, I feel this tells me that the next fleet will be the counter to Leviathan. Stopping the counters for Galactic Republic, Jedi, Rebels, that kind of stuff, I think this completely entails that mentality that they want the Leviathan to be clearly the second best fleet when this next one comes out. They don't want any kind of, oh, well, Executor counters this and it counters this and it counters, like, they clearly want to separate fleets into this caste-like system where there's no gray area, there's no room for argument and discussion, and I think this is kind of helping solve that. So now, let's talk about kit reveal Rogue One piece, right? The kit reveal here, the unit name Rogue One. Obviously, please get the reference of what that is. While it's the name of the movie, it's also the name of the ship that they take. It is a support cargo ship and it's rebels, and then of course the Rogue One. It's a lifter for Profundity, especially against Executor. Provides benefits to fleet while still in reinforcements. Strong synergy against Empire enemies. This is a huge deal, because recognize what that means. Empire enemies, that doesn't just mean the Leviathan fleet, or sorry, the Executor fleet. This also would mean that the Executrix under Tarkin will also have a tougher time dealing with this fleet. I'm the pilot. Bodhi Rook has been in the game for nearly a decade and hasn't had a ship, so we figured boosting Profundity would be the perfect opportunity to give him one. Lots of callouts for Profundity in the kit, playing into the Battle of Scarif and how the ship Rogue One was key to that operation. While the line, well there is now, was spoken by K2 in the movie, who is not part of the crew of this ship as he's already on Cassian's U-Ring, we wanted to include the line as an ability name because of how iconic it was in the moment. While it can be effective as a starting, it shines best starting the battle from reinforcements. Because it's a support cargo under Profundity, its damage should not be underestimated with combined with Profundity's passive, I Say We Fight. It's coming in a marquee event on September 23rd, so that is less than a week from the time of recording, which means, again, we are not skipping any time between Hondo and this ship coming to the game. Now, it's a marquee ship as well. Bear in mind what that means. We used to get these ships as galactic chases where a lot of us who were free to play or were light spenders could get them 7-star immediately. That is not the case with this ship. It is going to be something very similar to Punishing One where you're going to have to farm it and finish it out. If I don't have Bodhi Rook or POW, can I still unlock? The marquee event will give you Bodhi and POW shards in addition to Rogue One blueprints. For Rogue One's unique, it says while there are other non-capital ship allies, God, I can't talk today. Rogue One can't be targeted. It is immune to taunt effects during enemy turns. How does this work with effects like outmaneuver? In situations like this, which can and will come up with Millennium Falcon present, both ships become targetable. So outmaneuver with Han and the Falcon will make both ships targetable. So if Han's Millennium Falcon wiggles and gains outmaneuver, and it's just the Falcon and Rogue One in the field, then they both are targetable by enemies. For this part of Rogue One's unique, what does it mean by in reinforcements? If Rogue One is in the reinforcement slot and the enemy capital ship is Empire, all rebel allies gain breach immunity, which can't be copied, dispelled, or prevented, and protection up 100% for 2 turns, which can't be dispelled. When you enter the battle, if Rogue One is in reinforcements under Profundity capital ship and not one of the starting 3 ships, this effect occurs. The basic Covert Barrage. Deal special damage to target enemy 3 times and inflict target lock on them for 2 turns. If the enemy capital ship is Empire, this target lock can't be resisted. Special, I'm the pilot. This is Bodhi Rook's ability. If the Profundity deal special damage to all enemies, so that's an AoE. If Profundity is the active ally capital ship, call Outrider to assist and reduce target enemy speed by 10 for 2 turns, which can't be evaded or resisted. Spoofed clearance codes. This is POW's ability. Rebel allies recover 20% protection and gain tenacity up for 2 turns. If the enemy capital ship was Empire at the start of battle, inflict accuracy down on target enemy for 2 turns, which can't be resisted. If Profundity is the allied capital ship, reduce the cooldown of all rebel allies by 1. Unique SW0608. At the start of battle, if the ally capital ship is Profundity, Rogue One gains 25% max health, and if Rogue One is in the reinforcement slot and the enemy capital ship is Empire, all rebels gain breach immunity, which can't be copied, dispelled, or prevented, and protection up for 2 turns, which can't be dispelled. If the enemy capital ship is Empire while Rogue One is active or in reinforcements, non-capital ship enemies are immune to cooldown reduction. That means Slave 1 won't be able to reduce its cooldowns for hitting contract. That means that, any kind of abilities that, hey, this happens and cooldown gets reduced, those are no longer in effect. Whenever an ally evades an enemy attack, they gain speed up for 2 turns. While there are other non-capital allies, Rogue One can't be targeted and is immune to taunt effects during enemy turns. Recognize that also means if you were to use Geonosian Spy, that taunt that it can give off to the target and a random ally would not be able to go on Bodhi Rook's ship. Reinforcement, well, there is now. Inflict healing, enter battle, inflict healing immunity on all enemies for 2 turns, which can't be evaded or resisted. If Profundity is the ally capital ship, reset the cooldown of call reinforcements, and if the enemy capital ship is not Sith, increase download by 20%. If the enemy capital ship is Empire, increase the cooldowns of non-capital ship enemies by 1. That is crazy. So this reinforcement ability is acting like Ghost does. If you remember Ghost, when Ghost enters the battle, it reduces the capital ship's reinforcements by 1, which is hugely, it's such an impactful, or Phantom, sorry. Phantom, when it comes in, hey, reduce the reinforcement of the allied capital ship by 1, right? So that's very similar to the Ghost, because in the Rogue One's kit, it's saying, hey, reset the cooldown. So this not only is like Ghost, it's better because it's resetting, which means as soon as you bring in Rogue One, next turn you can bring in another reinforcement, which if you think about the Profundity fleet, that means you could bring in a ship like the Phantom or the Ghost and juice the, how do I want to phrase this? And, juice that fleet to just ridiculous levels, be able to really kind of, get that download a lot faster, and increasing by 20% is also big. So this, you're going to be able to get your upload progress a lot faster, and things are going to be kind of crazy. So I really like this ship. It definitely feels like it's going to be, again, it seems to be really targeting Executor more so than other things. I still am curious to see how this plays a role against the, if I think about the Empire, some of the counters that go up against this, I think this will play a big role. The one question I have is, what is the reinforcement priority of this ship? In case you didn't know, some ships have a much higher reinforcement priority than others. For example, in Profundity, right, if we use the Rebel fleet as an example, Biggs Darklighter has one of the highest reinforcement priorities, meaning it will come out first, which, if you put that with Profundity, is not always a desired outcome because it doesn't really get the benefits that some of these other ships do. If Rogue One has a high reinforcement priority, this ship on defense will be devastating. If it doesn't have that high of a priority, defensively, it might still be able to get exploited by some of these other Empire fleets. Now, a few other things that you'll want to note here is that in the Executrix counter to Profundity, you're oftentimes in a race against their ultimate. If this ship comes out and gives 20%, even if you're not getting those assists, that still is a devastating ability, and it's delaying the time that you can bring reinforcements in. So this really does feel like a counter that is going to hurt even the non-Executor fleets from working because of some of those other mechanics at play. So with this here now, I think it's very solidly going to be the, second best fleet from the standpoint of Executor's going to struggle against it. But going back to this, change to the Leviathan though, Profundity's getting impacted, but the Executor is not. So while this ship is going to be second best in saying, hey, Leviathan beats this, Profundity beats this, and they struggle, Executor is not getting any kind of punishment in this new Leviathan change. So Executor's place in having that kind of soft meta ability to, or soft counter to the Leviathan, that is not getting tweaked, that's not getting changed. I find that to be very interesting now, because Profundity has been the ship for a while, that, especially since Punishing One, that a lot of us say, hey, skip it because it's clearly like the third best fleet. It's not that good. I still kind of feel like Profundity's place is going to be that third S tier fleet, simply because Executor will be able to still kind of contend with Leviathan, where Profundity very much seems like they're kind of, hey, drawing a line. we do not intend this to beat Leviathan at all. In fact, they're making it worse than it already is with this change. That's a lot. I 100% believe this means there's another fleet that will be coming to kind of take the place of Leviathan at the top of the meta. I don't know when that's going to happen. I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. It definitely isn't happening in the next era just based on the ships and the characters that are coming in, which we'll talk about in another video. But it does beg the question of what would be next to kind of, bring that to a head. And from the perspective of if you're free to play or you've been in your fleet arena for a long time, listen, it's going to get busy with people getting Leviathan. You're going to have to be, you might have to be climbing more because by this point we should have been 2 capital ships to the good to where you could kind of stay ahead of those people. This is a massive opportunity for the game to catch up in ships. I really do wonder if we're getting to the point now. Where they're looking at Fleet Arena and saying, hey, you know what? Maybe we kind of take a look at this and say, do we remove the crystals? Because you're not changing the meta anymore. There's not as much incentive for somebody like you think right now. Look at my Fleet Arena. Everybody's got Leviathan. Everybody has it's just Leviathans all over the place. There's not really incentive for someone to spend on Leviathan to get it higher relic because it doesn't make a difference. So I'm curious if that's the next thing that they will go to. Again, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know. But I did want to kind of throw it in here as I'm curious if that, change would come into effect. That said, folks, a lot of stuff to go over still, but we talked here Profundity, got the Rogue One kit kind of out there for you. Talked about the Leviathan change and what I think that means. Let me know your thoughts down below. Like, subscribe, comment. I love you all. May the Force be with you, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers, my friends.